Feel free to stand behind me. It's quiet. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here. My name is Ahmed Rahab, A-H-M-E-D, M as in Mike, E, D as in David, Rehab, R-E-H-A-B. I'm the Executive Director of the Council on American-Islamic Relations in Chicago, known as CAIR-Chicago. And today I am joined with community members to discuss the situation that is happening right now in Gaza, where we are seeing the forced displacement of 140,000 Palestinians, and the mass murder of hundreds of civilians, including hundreds of children. This is just in the past few days after a fragile ceasefire was disrupted. This comes on the tail end of what has been described as a genocide by the United Nations, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and Israeli genocide experts over the past year and a half by the Israeli military targeting infrastructure, homes, schools, and the lives and livelihoods of Palestinians in Gaza. We'll also talk a little bit about the situation here in the United States with the arrests of students and others who are protesting or who have protested these events in Gaza and who have been essentially kidnapped and detained. I'll begin with that briefly. So we've already had four very high-profile cases. Rumeisa Öztürk at Tufts University, Mahmoud Khalil, Columbia University, Ali Reza Daroudi at University of Alabama, an Iranian doctor, and Yunseo Chong at Columbia University. In the case of most of these, if not all of them, they were basically whisked away from a public area or a private area like the halls of their residence by men and women in plain clothes into unmarked cars. Oftentimes, these men and women are masked, and so it almost looks as if our government has dwindled into a mass vigilante punishment tool, basically a vigilante kidnapping enterprise to punish and penalize these American to-be, green card holders or student residents who are student visa holders because of their free speech, because of their expression of conscience. That to us is very startling. It is something that we as Americans cannot stand by and watch without, objecting to it. And we really call on our elected officials to stand up for what America is all about, which is freedom of expression and speech, and not extrajudicial punishment of those whom those in power do not like or whose views they do not like. This is not communist China. This is not Assad Syria. This is not the Soviet Union. With that, I want to call our first speaker. This is Raja Arayes, who is a Chicago resident with displaced family members in Gaza, to share her personal testimony on what her family is going through, starvation and the economic devastation and such. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Raja. I'm a mom and a wife, and my family has been in Gaza for over 400 years. Over 200 members of my family have been killed by Israel, including my cousins, my best friends. I'm here with my kids today who will never meet their cousins in Gaza because Israel bombed the 6-story building full of 3 generations of my family. Some of my family members are still buried under the rubble, and Israel won't allow us to give them a decent burial. My surviving cousins are currently struggling to live on very little food because Israel won't allow any food into Gaza. Who is Israel punishing exactly? My cousin has to walk miles to get water for his baby because Israel shut off the water and destroyed the desalination plants. I'd like to ask my representative, Bill Foster, why he hasn't met with my family and other Palestinian families. Are we invisible to you, Mr. Foster? Are you so racist that Palestinian lives don't matter to you? Do these dead Palestinians mean nothing to you, Mr. Foster? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Raja. Our next speaker is William Asfour, a Chicago resident who lost 9 family members in Gaza in just the past 10 days. And in addition to that, unfortunately, he has lost dozens upon dozens, scores upon scores of family members who've been killed since October, when this started, October 8th, when the bombings and the attacks started on Gaza.
Good afternoon, my name is William Asfour. First name William, W-I-L-L-I-A-M. Last name Asfour, A-S-F-O-U-R. I'm a 28-year-old Palestinian American in the Chicagoland area. So in the last 10 days alone, Israel has killed 7 of my little cousins and their parents. Please don't forget the names of the innocent kids that Israel has killed in just the past 10 days. Jannah Ahmed, Ali, Jude, Abdul Hakim, Anas, Jannah, Ayman, and Leen. This is Leen Abutayed. She's the youngest, 9 years old, and her brother was the oldest at 15. So her father, Dr. Ayman Abutayed, was head of nutrition at Nasser Hospital. And this is what's left of his wife, his mother, and his children. By the way, they targeted his family again 6 hours ago. Sorry about that. To survive Israel's bombs, snipers, and drones, my family has decided to split up, go into different hospitals, shelters, and different tents, so that if one group is bombed, the other might have a chance to survive. My uncle is surviving on expired canned food because Israel is blocking humanitarian aid and food into Gaza, deliberately creating a famine. Even during the so-called ceasefire, my family was terrified because Israel killed 150 Palestinians in Gaza with American tax dollars. So dozens of my relatives, since October 7th, 2023 until now, dozens of my relatives and neighbors have been killed by Israel, including kids, as I showed you. So I want to ask my Congressman, Sean Casten, why haven't you called me back? Why haven't you decided to meet with me? Why haven't you asked me how my family's doing? I'm your constituent. And President Trump, you lied. You campaigned on stopping wars, but you're allowing Israel to kill my family. You're allowing Israel to use starvation as a weapon and collectively punish the population. Put America first, as you said you would. Thank you.
Thank you, William. Our last speaker this morning will be, or this afternoon at this point, will be Dr. Gulrana Sayed, who's a healthcare worker and is part of Healthcare Workers for Palestine. She'll speak about the medical travesties that we're facing in Gaza and give you some more information about that.
Hi everyone, my name is Gulrana Sayed. I'm a physician and member of Healthcare Workers for Palestine, Chicago, of which Dr. Tammy Abu-Ghanaim is a member. Dr. Tammy Abu-Ghanaim is an emergency medicine physician, a lifelong Chicago native, works in the emergency rooms here in Illinois. This bombing of Nasser Hospital occurred while Dr. Abu-Ghanaim, as well as several other U.S. healthcare workers and physicians, were there working to treat casualties ever since Israel broke the ceasefire last week. The bombing seriously damaged the men's surgical ward of the hospital in a time when surgeries are one of the most critical life-saving functions of the hospital and healthcare system. Let us be clear, this is not the first attack on hospitals in the Gaza Strip. This is just the first on a hospital harboring American healthcare workers. The World Health Organization has registered over 1,000 attacks on healthcare facilities in the occupied Palestinian territories since October 7, 2023. Just last week, Israel destroyed a cancer hospital in the Gaza Strip. At least 1,200 healthcare workers in the Gaza Strip are known to have been killed by Israeli bombing. Since then, at least 384 Gazan healthcare workers have been unlawfully detained by Israel. We know that the endangerment of American healthcare physicians' lives in the Nasser Hospital is the direct consequence of U.S. lawmakers failing to sufficiently pressure Israel to cease attacks on life-sustaining institutions in Gaza, including hospitals, water sanitation facilities, and UN agencies. Of note, this attack on Nasser Hospital came during an ongoing humanitarian blockade on Gaza. We have now reached 24 days of no humanitarian aid entering the Gaza Strip. That includes medicine, medical supplies, food, and water. Israel has also placed increased restrictions on medical delegations entering, meaning less physicians and nurses have been able to come into Gaza to help Food is running out, water infrastructure is still damaged. Dr. Abu Ghanayem, again a Chicago native, said about the attacks on Nasser Hospital, "I don't think I can adequately describe what it felt like knowing we were targets, that our department was in danger, that everyone around us was in danger, and not knowing what would happen next." We call on our Illinois lawmakers, as well as all U.S. lawmakers, to condemn the bombing of hospitals and the endangerment of U.S. healthcare workers. And we call on them to call for an arms embargo. We call on our healthcare institutions to do the same until our lawmakers put consequences on Israel for targeting life-sustaining institutions in the Gaza Strip. We cannot expect American lives to be safe in Gaza.
Thank you very much, Dr. Guarana. So to conclude, we've been at this podium several times over the past few months, making the same demands, the same calls to our public officials. And these calls seem to fall on deaf ears. We've been calling for our government to not contribute, to not abet, to not assist genocide against innocent people in Gaza. And furthermore, to stop the genocide against these innocent civilians in Gaza. The numbers are clear, the reports are clear, the consequences are clear. These are not just tens of thousands of children, men and women, who are being killed by bombs from the skies and snipers. It's not just arms and legs that are being amputated and people being maimed. People with injuries that are lifelong. It is the purposeful and intended destruction of an infrastructure so as to render life impossible for people in the Gaza Strip. That is the definition of genocide. It is the targeting of hospitals and schools, the targeting of medical aid workers and journalists. And the numbers that we're seeing in this particular conflict, what's happening right now, are numbers we've never seen recently in any conflict around the world. CAIR-Chicago calls on Illinois representatives to condemn Israel's attacks as continued violations of international law, ensure the safety of Chicago Illinois resident, Dr. Tammy Abu Ghanayem, who is providing emergency care in Nasser Hospital, which was bombed, along with other U.S. and Palestinian medical workers. You can hear her harrowing testimony, her audio testimony from our website. And by the way, Dr. Tammy was present with us in several of these press conferences right here in this room, on this podium. And now her life is in danger, helping the victims of this genocide. To push for an arms embargo against Israel, to demand an immediate permanent ceasefire that ends the blockade on humanitarian aid to Palestinians, which right now is not being allowed in, to investigate and halt the Trump administration's politically motivated deportations of international students and scholars for the protected free speech, everything I just described. To think that those who have a problem with it are being targeted for having a problem with it and being whisked away in the night and thrown in some cell somewhere to be chucked out of the country simply for saying that they have a problem with genocide. Lastly, to demand the release of these detained students and to reject the use of AI surveillance and visa revocations to silence dissent on Palestine or any freedom of conscience issue. Thank you very much. We have now concluded. If you have any questions, please let us know. Yeah, so we'll also have one of our speakers here who has these young children. She'll be in our conference room just sitting with the children. If anybody wants extra B-roll of that interaction, grandparents are there, etc., you're welcome to bring your camera for some more B-roll. If you want to take more shots of these pictures of the victims of this genocide, you're welcome to do so as well.
So maybe introducing any of these family members that haven't been.
Do you want to point out quickly who these pictures are of?
Yes, so this is my mom's uncle. He was killed November 2023. This is Tesnea. She was 14 years old. She was killed in that same bomb. And this is her brother, Ahmad. He was also killed. All these people here were killed except for my grandmother here. But these are her siblings. So Hakeem Asfour and her sister, both of them were killed. This is what's left of my grandfather's house. He built it in the 70s, where my mom was born and raised, grew up in, gone, where I spent the first 4 years of my life, gone. Another angle of it, all these kids here were killed. This is my first cousin, Yusuf Abu Hamza. His father was also a doctor, and he was killed the first week of October 7th, 2023. He was critically injured. Now he's the oldest of his 5 siblings, and my aunt is now a widow. And her husband, as a doctor, was killed. There's pictures. Oh yeah, and over there.
I have a question on behalf of the administration for you. Are any of these kids Hamas terrorists to your knowledge?
No, they're not.
Okay,
I can confirm
just
that.
making sure.
Yeah, she's definitely not. And then lastly, over there, sorry, excuse me. This is Khalil Asfour. He was sheltering in a school, and he was sniped. He was sniped by an Israeli soldier. And he was left to bleed, and nobody was able to save him. This is Talat Asfour. He's in his 40s. He was also sniped the same day in a different school, in Khan Yunis, in the safe zone, in February of 2024. These are the same siblings with those other kids. Fatima Asfour and Hanan Asfour. Hanan was 3 months old, and she was killed. 3 months old. And this is her here. And they have one sibling that survived, and she was in Egypt to get treatment, and I was able to meet her and talk to her. She was 8 years old at the time, and she told me she wished she died with her siblings. And now their cousins were just killed, the ones I mentioned earlier. Yeah, this is insane. Their aunt was just killed literally like 10 days ago. So the suffering just doesn't stop. If anyone has questions, each one of them has a story. I can provide any pictures and any testimonies if you guys like. Thank you.
In just one day, 174 children were killed last week. In just one day, 174 children were killed. We know about the mass shootings and how much these events rightly shake up our country. Sometimes it's 8 kids, sometimes it's 12 kids. Imagine if we had a mass shooting, God forbid, where 174 children are killed in one event. That is what we're facing in Gaza, and that's what's barely making the news, let alone getting these elected officials off their seats, let's put it politely, to get up and do something about it.
Sorry, I have one more poster, if I can.
Yeah.
These people, they were all held hostage. So they were kidnapped January 2024. He was released in January after the ceasefire, the prisoner swap, they call it. He was released after 2 months.
Kidnapped by who?
Kidnapped by Israel, January 2024. This to Sayyid Asfour. This is his son. They're both kidnapped the same day. He was let out 2 days after. They beat the shit out of him. They took his passports. He lost a significant amount of weight, and he's lost a little bit of hearing and eyesight as well. And he got treatment in Egypt last February. This is Asad Asfour. He was also kidnapped. He was released. Everyone here is released except for him. He's still held hostage. And his brother was killed, by the way, 2 weeks ago. And he won't even know until he gets released, if he gets released by Israel. So yeah, I can provide any pictures, any videos, any testimonies if you guys like afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.